the House Republican caucus, sort of flushed with their victory, went ahead and changed the rules that governed the leadership of their caucus. And one of those rules was that if a member of the leadership were indicted, he had to step down. And this was right about the time when Tom DeLay knew he was about to be indicted. So their first act as a re-elected majority was to, enable Tom DeLay's criminal actions sort of in advance, which is not the kind of thing you would think that a politician would want to do, out in the light of day. They did it in a private meeting with a unrecorded show of hands and so forth. And it struck me, this was one of those cases where if light could be shined on the individual people in question, no one would stand behind this. And so what I ended up doing was getting readers to call the offices of their local representatives and ask. And it's easy to blow off a journalist, but it's much harder to do that with constituents. And not surprisingly, no one wanted to admit whether they had voted for this thing or not. And so we were able to, or at the time it was just me, able to mobilize a few thousand people across the country who were relatively quickly able to reveal who had voted what way on this measure. And eventually it led to, repeal isn't exactly the right word, but they basically couldn't stand behind it, and it eventually ended up being withdrawn. And then the following year, during the President Bush's attempt to privatize Social Security, by this point, with these other cases, I was getting more of a sense of how it was possible in cases like this to mobilize these networks of people that were able to bring forward information that conventional journalism was both unable and in some ways uninterested in pulling together. And the focus there was to find out where individual members of Congress stood on this issue, whether they supported privatization of Social Security or not. And so we came up with short lists, just the people who were on an odd side of the issue, Democrats who were supporting it, Republicans who were against it. And during that period, there are insider trade sheets in Washington, D.C. that the political class basically uses, the Hotline, National Journal Group stuff, where this kind of information is generally put together. But I think during that period of time, I don't think there's any question that our site, Talking Points Memo, had the best intelligence than anybody had, than the people in the White House had, than the people in Congress had, over just where each member of Congress stood. And that was very powerful to have that information and be able to shine a light on the different people. And that was all from having, out of an audience of, say, 150,000 readers a day, 10,000 readers who were going to town hall meetings and asking questions and recording what was said, who were receiving constituent mails, who were calling the offices of their representatives. And we didn't pass this on without checking it, but stuff like that is easy to verify once you know what to look for. So we were able to find out, I don't have any doubt, we were able to find out when people were changing their positions before the leadership in the Congress were finding out, before the people in the White House. In fact, I know we were usually ahead of what the White House knew. Now, these were each, this was journalism, but with a heavy tinge of activism to it. But it was at that point that I really could sort of see, like, wow, if you did this in a concerted way for reporting on political corruption, you could do some amazing things. And that's when I started basically hiring other reporters, and we built out sort of to the organization that we have right now, where this is the model that we use in everything, in all the reporting that we do. We're heavily dependent on the tips, the feedback, and the specialized knowledge of different readers when we come to different stories.